So this is what's going on with the old fuel pump in there. It's actually losing fuel pressure at a relatively low RPM, which kind of scared me, which is why I didn't really push it that hard. You can see right here. Unfortunately, I didn't figure out how to do the transform. So this MPVI 2.2 volts, it's just reading the voltage of the fuel pressure sensor. It's not actually converting it to a pressure, but around 2.25 volts is around 50 or 60 psi. And this is a rising rate fuel pressure regulator. So as the map pressure increases, the fuel pressure should increase. And you can see here, it's following that trend, and then it sort of levels off. And if you see up here, RPM is increasing. As RPM increases, fuel pressure drops, even though the pressure is staying the same. And then as soon as, so you can see right here, 68 kPa to 72 kPa, that should have spiked the fuel pressure, and it didn't. It continued to drop because the RPM continued to climb. You can see the same thing right here. It really erratic right here around 3,000 RPM. So we're at 2,800 RPM, which is already higher than right here, and we're super erratic. It climbs as pressure climbs, and then it never really gets anywhere above 50 or 55 psi, and eventually just starts to plummet like a rock, even with this fuel pressure. You can see right here, or even with the added map pressure that puts additional pressure on top of the spring to raise the fuel pressure to account for boost, because 62 kPa here is actually boost. I have my map sensor. The computer can only handle a 1 bar map sensor, but I have a 2 bar map sensor in it right now, and you have to half everything. So 62 kPa times 2 would be 124 kPa, and you have to take away 15 psi for atmospheric pressure. So I'm running about 3 pounds of boost right here in this map, or in this graph. I'm running around 3 pounds of boost, and it's losing fuel pressure like crazy. So right here, it actually climbs, but it only, it starts getting erratic around 2,400 RPM. So that's what it looked like on the old fuel pump.
So the next thing that needs to be addressed is the fuel pump. So the current fuel pump that's in the truck right now is the fuel pump out of my Corvette. When I yanked it, you have to go back years, but when I yanked my Corvette apart and pulled the fuel pump system apart, I took the Walbro, I think it's a 255 that's in there, and put it in here because I knew I needed a bigger fuel pump. Well, now I'm on E85, running more boost, bigger injectors, and I have bigger springs, so I plan to rev it a little bit higher. Instead of the factory 5,300, I'm probably going to go all the way to 6,000. So I decided I'm going to get a bigger pump. So I went with this guy because I have literally tuned 600 wheel horsepower with that pump, not running out of pump. It was on a 2010, no, like a 12 or a 13. It was a Gen 1 Coyote Mustang with 150 shot of nitrous. And he tapped into the existing fuel line for his fuel for the wet nitrous shot. So I tuned 600 rear wheel horsepower on nitrous with that pump. So he had a Deechworks 400 in there and no signs whatsoever of losing fuel control. So that's sort of overkill, but when you start to look at fuel pumps, that was like, I think it was like 180 bucks, and all the other pumps are like 150 or 160 or 200 or whatever, so I just went with that one. It's reliable. I know Deechworks is a good brand. I've put tons of their stuff in cars. I'm fine with it. So that's going in there. It comes with a little kit, in-tank, fuel hose, the connector, crimps, blah, blah, blah. And then what I did is I built my own hot wire kit. This is a 40 amp weather sealed relay. What I'm going to do is pin this into the stock fuel pump relay spot. Just pull the relay out and plug that in there. And then this is a Holley harness wire. So this wire is super good wire. So is this. So this is just a ground wire. This is just trigger. It's going to go there. This goes into the fuse box. This is my 10 gauge wire. all in one run. This goes to the alternator. This is going to go all the way to the fuel pump. So I will have 0 fuel system issues. I have right now the, where's that? If you go back and look at some of my videos, I've got Parker push lock hose in there right now that goes from the fuel tank hat, one run all the way up to here. I have a boost reference regulator. And then I bought me, this is part of some of the stuff I needed to get for the Corvette anyway, but I bought, and if you don't know, Racetronics is a great brand. You should check them out, but I got me a bulkhead, Dash 6 bulkhead fitting to go in the hat, just because whenever I get it apart, you'll see I'm going to replace that. All this other stuff is actually for the Corvette. All the stuff I'm going to need, because I'm doing a Dash 8 return style system on the Corvette. Right now it's the stock-ish system, you'll see, but a lot of that's fuel rails, which I guess I could tease a little bit. These are the fuel rails I'm going with on the Corvette. All the good stuff for the Corvette, all of it, and I'm just waiting for this to be finished so I have something to drive while I have the Corvette apart. This is one part of the reason why I really wanted to get in here and change my fuel pump, because this is a really cheap fitting that doesn't actually go all the way through there. You can tell it's been leaking for a long time, so that's one part of the reason why I wanted to get in here and change this. Here's my wonderful custom job there. At least I've got submersible fuel hose. But there's definitely some goo. I don't know what that is. Looks like corrosion. Because this is aluminum, but it's not anodized. So unless aluminum is anodized, E85 will just sort of eat it up. And you see there's some corrosion there. And there's a little bit of corrosion on my float thing, and I've realized over the past few months the fuel level sensor has not been all that accurate when it gets down to the low point, so that's also something that I'm going to be looking into. This is why it's important to buy ethanol safe fuel system components. It creates this white powdery stuff and it oxidizes aluminum, so trying to decide what I'm going to do about this going back together, because this is aluminum, it's the bucket, and I kind of need that. I may just leave the fuel pump dangling in there. I'm not 100% sure, but then I don't know what to do about this guy, so got some thinking to do. So here's the final install of the pump. Got my new bulkhead fitting in there. Got the wire marked for the pump. I'm actually gonna just cut the wire right there and send my 10 gauge in through here, because this is actually a pretty heavy wire. It's thicker than the wire that came with the pump. Here's the wires that came with the pump, and it's actually bigger, heavier gauge than that. So, and it's actually a really thick connector going through there. So I'm just gonna cut the wire up here somewhere and connect my 10 gauge directly to here, and then it'll go in there. And I'm using one of these 100 amp connectors that are weather sealed and stuff to give me a connection point right there. So bulkhead, there's my barbed fitting, my corrugated hose. This is a stainless steel clamp, and you can see maybe down in there it says Deechworks, and I would recommend corrugated nylon hose anytime you go in the tank, because you can literally bend this stuff in an S shape and it does not diminish the flow, and it's flexible. The other thing I added was I added the ground from the wire harness to the bucket. Hopefully that will stop some of the corrosion that's going on. But all in all, after, I guess it's been running E85 now for 3 or 4 years, didn't really corrode that much. So I cleaned off all the corrosion, and I'm just going back with the way it was because I need this thing done, and I'm finished playing with it. So crimped me some connectors. I actually had some of these laying around that fit this same one. Made some modifications, but it's going back together like that. All right, so now I need to test to make sure that all of my wires are correct. So this is probably not the smartest thing, but I put a gallon or so of fuel in the tank, and I have jumper cables connected to my fuel pump leads to make sure I've got positive correct and negative correct. And I just need to make sure it flows, so I've got my wires hooked up correctly. Okay, good enough. Oh, I've got a leak. Oh, I know why I have a leak. I don't have that tight. If I have a leak, that means it's building pressure in an open hose.
So here we go. This is a data log of a wide open throttle pull, and the fuel pump is actually not holding fuel pressure all the way through the RPM, so I'm not going to be able to rev it as high as I want to, which is fine because it's a daily driver truck, not a big deal. So let's look at TPS right here. On my truck, 74% for whatever reason is to the floor. That's wide open throttle. Around 13% is idle. That's the throttle fully closed. And right here you can see I'm going about 6 miles an hour, rolling around a curve, about to get on the interstate, and I just matted it. And it got all the way up to, it shifts around 53 or 5400 RPM, depending on which gear and things like that. And you can see right here, RPMs shoot up to 5400 RPM, going about 40 miles an hour. That's first gear, fully matted. Boost pressure is, it maxes out around 82. Oh, I hit 83 right there, 84 kPa. But I don't know how consistent that is. And it actually holds that pressure pretty much all the way through the rev range. I don't know how consistent this sensor is reading, but 82 kPa in my truck on this reading, the way I have everything scaled, is actually 164 kPa in reality, but atmospheric pressure is about 100. So max, I'm running at wide open throttle, it makes 9 pounds of boost. And what's hilarious about my truck is it makes 9 pounds of boost as soon as you open the throttle. So right here, it's making 8 pounds of boost at 56% throttle. So, I mean, pretty much as soon as you open the stinking thing, you get 9 pounds of boost, and it just busts the tires loose. Here, I rolled into it actually kind of soft because I'm still tuning. Right here, you can see the tip end's a little weird. But I max out right here at 73 PSI. You can see here, I'm around, it idles around 56 PSI. 55, 56 PSI. And you can see right here, boost pressure increases, fuel pressure increases, you top out around 73 psi, and then you can see it steadily falls just a little bit, falls about a pound or 2 pounds once I hit 5400 RPM. Same thing, it repeats the same pattern, shifts into second gear, we're at 4000 RPM, fuel pressure increases, and then it slowly decreases as RPMs climb. And then it spikes whenever I roll out of the throttle. So that's, and I'm running relatively rich. There is no intercooler on this thing. So I'm running this thing pretty rich. And as RPMs increase, it gets richer and richer and richer. There was still some tuning I had to do right here in this range. And I've got this more or less dialed out, but there's so many limitations with this computer. This is the stock 2001 non-boosted computer that's in this truck. So I'm doing the best I can with what's in there. All in all, it is extremely snappy. So I think I'm happy with where it is. You know, shifting at 53, 5400 RPM is not a big deal. It'll live forever that way. So the new fuel pump was necessary and it meets the needs. I just can't push it any harder than I am right now.